All right, our special guest tonight is Anthony Dominici. Anthony was born and raised in New Orleans, went to school at UNO, graduated in film studies, and went on to be a producer and director of a lot of reality television shows. He's in town this week, this month, I'm not sure how long, to do his Extreme Makeover what's the name of it?
Home Edition.
Home Edition. So please welcome Anthony Dominici. Thanks. Anthony, thanks. So, well, tell us about it. How did you fall into that corner of the business, making these kinds of shows?
Well, I guess I started off here in New Orleans as a camera. I'll give you the whole story.
Yeah.
I started off here in New Orleans as a camera assistant, PA first, and the camera assistant on films, in town. Worked on like Dead Man Walking and a bunch of also documentaries and stuff like that. And started shooting a little bit as a DP, cinematographer, and went to AFI in '96. I went to AFI to study cinematography, and then actually I switched to directing, and then my thesis film, played in Sundance, and from that I got my first job actually as a director. On the Real World when they shot here in New Orleans. I was living in LA, but I came back, applied for the job, and got the job as one of the directors on the show.
That's the MTV show?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that pretty much started my reality career.
So you're doing a lot of shows, though. What are the shows you've been involved with?
I did Real World for a few seasons, Real World in New Orleans, in New York, and some of the challenges. That's back in probably 2001 I started doing that, and then from there I produced the Real World Chicago, and then I got asked to produce America's Next Top Model, and I did that for 7 seasons.
Wow!
As the executive producer.
That was a big hit, right?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Oh, and also The Amazing Race was in. I did The Amazing Race for a few seasons in there.
Really?
Yeah.
Going around the world shooting the strange footage.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I did that for 3 seasons, and so actually after I messed up there. After Real World, I did Amazing Race, and then I did America's Next Top Model, and then I'm just starting now with Extreme Makeover. I'm not really producing the show. I'm just sort of observing the season that's currently filming, and this is the finale that they're shooting here in New Orleans. And then next season, when we start up in June, I'll be executive producer of that show.
So you've been a DP, a director, a producer, and an executive producer.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? The DP, director of photography, is the guy behind the camera.
Behind the camera, yeah, just sort of setting up the shots, and I really enjoyed that. Actually, I minored in film at UNO, but I majored in fine art photography. My whole background was more art. And I thought I was going to be a painter when I was a kid, and then I really got into photography, and that sort of led to cinematography. Yeah, so it's like lighting the scene and setting up the shot, and helping the director block the scene, and I really enjoyed that a lot. But then I kind of realized I probably wanted to control a little bit more, so then I started directing. So it's really more, you can tell the cameraman what to do and where to go and how I want it to look, but also you're dealing with the actors and the script and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit more, and then. I wasn't really planning at all to get into the whole reality television business. There really wasn't a business much when I started. It was just pretty much The Real World and Cops, I think, in 2000. And then while I was filming here in New Orleans is when Survivor came on the air, and that whole thing blew up after that.
I changed it.
And then all of a sudden I had a skill set that was sought after.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So
when you're the director of photography and you're a fine arts photographer, so you're looking at a scene from that standpoint. You're trying to make art out of that every time you look in the camera.
Yeah, you're trying to tell the story. When you're a DP. When I studied at the AFI, the sort of mentality was, you're telling a story like a writer is telling a story at the beginning, middle, and end with words. You're as a cinematographer, you're telling that same story in pictures. So it may be the color of the lighting or the length of the lens that you use or whatever, to sort of like if you want it to be a wide angle shot, that sort of says something as you're viewing it, that a really wide angle shot has a certain sort of understood vocabulary, just like a long telephoto shot with like only 2 inches in focus and everything else soft focus in the background. That sort of gives you an indication of what is going on in the scene, and so that's how you kind of control the image. So as a cinematographer, that's the way we studied it, which I thought was really helpful actually. And I use those skills every day.
And all your other work.
And all my work that I do now in directing and executive producing. It's good to know. It's good to have worked on the crews and understand what it's like to lug heavy boxes and be a camera assistant, but also know when you walk into a room, like if the lighting's in the wrong spot, or if the guy says it's going to take 4 more hours to do this, and I really know it's going to take a half an hour, whatever.
Right.
You sort of know. It's just a good skill to have. So, and again, I never really thought I'd be a producer. I never really wanted to be a producer, but the opportunity presented itself, and the jobs keep getting bigger and better, and why not?
That's the boss job, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: going back to director of photography, you work for a director. Mm-hmm. In that situation, what do you look for? What makes a good director if you're a DP?
I guess I don't know. Actually, it's different for every working relationship, I would say. What I would look for is someone who really knows what they want and wants to communicate it, but also gives you enough freedom to sort of express what you want to express and is open to the collaboration. But as a cinematographer, I always knew that, well, it's the director's show, and I would really usually defer to what their ultimate decision was going to be, and I would basically try to present as many options as I could as to, like, this is how I think it should look, and I want it to be these colors, and it should be low-key lighting or whatever, all those different visual aspects of storytelling. So that's a really important thing. Some DPs would prefer that the director doesn't know anything about cinematography and wants to do it themselves. So it really depends on how you like to work. It's just like with anything else. Like if you're in a band, if you want to have a band leader, or if it's just, or if you just want to have a collaboration.
But as a director, then you must have a great sensitivity to the DP.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have a shorthand that like it's just with anything. If like with, I guess you guys are in music class, so I'll just use that reference. If you know how to read music, you can explain something probably better than someone who does to someone who doesn't know how to read music. So you're speaking the same language. I can tell them, like, I want it to look like this, and I can do that very quickly because I know ultimately as a director or as a producer what I'm going after.
Have you settled on one or two guys or women that you really particularly like?
Yeah, in reality, I have a guy that I work with. We actually went to AFI together. We were directors together.
Really?
And I hired him on when I did The Real World Chicago, when I was producing that show, and he was just like the new guy director. But I really liked him, and I liked working with him, and so and he did pretty much all of my top models with me when we worked together. And again, it's just like you're working with your friends, and that's a big thing about, I'm sure, here, and also like when I can speak to my experience at AFI especially, where the people who you're going to school with are the next generation.
Right.
So you'll be working together, and hopefully you'll get a chance to hire each other, and hopefully one day someone would hire me because I've hired them or whatever. Right. So it just becomes a real kind of brotherhood, I guess.
Now, so who works for you? I'm just going to cover each position if you don't mind. The DP, who's working for you in that position? Who are you responsible for?
Well, as an executive producer, as a
DP.
Oh, as a DP. The DP who's working for me is the camera assistants who are like pulling focus or loading film or whatever, whatever the format, whatever the tape.
You shot all formats, right?
Yeah, pretty much, film and video.
Do you prefer one over the other?
Film is always better. It's nicer to have a big old camera and you're putting it down, and the image is going to be great. Like shooting 35 millimeter, that's always great. Expensive
process, though, right?
Yeah, but and it's a slow process, but something that kind of you grow to love, that sort of the vibe on a set. I really enjoy. When I was a PA, I was like, I don't know why, I just sort of really felt that I loved being in this environment. It's a very organized environment, and it's people are always trying to push themselves and push their craft to the next level, and that's a great experience. And it's also an apprenticeship sort of program, from camera assistant. So when I was a loader, I would hope to be a second AC, second camera assistant, and then a first AC, and I got a chance to do all those jobs.
So that's the team, the loader,
the loader, the second AC, who will like do the marks and do sometimes the clapper,
right?
And then the first AC who'd pull focus.
Pull focus.
Yeah, pull focus is like if you have a long film lens, the depth of field is really short,
right.
especially if you're doing like 35 millimeter.
Right.
So, so if an actor is here and they walk over there, I'll have to,
I see.
literally turn the knob on the lens to change the focus lens so that they're in focus, over there.
Right.
So we call that pulling focus.
So who was the other people on the team? Those three? And
so you have those people, and then you have a gaffer who is your sort of right-hand man for lighting. They're sort of the lead electrician. You'll say, I want a nice soft light, and or whatever type of light that you want. You'll say, I want a nice soft light and a kicker in the back, which is like just like a rim, like a hard light in the background to light their hair or whatever, and something on the background. You'd say, I want it to look like sort of like this, and the gaffer knows all the lighting equipment really well, the different types of lights and the different types of equipment that they would use to make that look in a certain way that you want it to be. And then there's also a key grip who is sort of responsible for all the flags, and if you need to soften the light and put it through some sort of like a scrim or a gel, like if you wanted to look orange, the grips would put those things in front of the lights.
All those people go to places like AFI, American Film Institute, or go to a UNO, or
no, you don't have to. You don't have to go to school at all to do that, to learn that sort of stuff. It's a trade, mostly, like anything else, I would say.
Just apprentice.
Yeah, so you could start off as a grip, who's guys lugging cables or whatever, or an grip or electric, and usually guys sort of double to do both. They'll be moving cables, or moving the flags, and moving all the C-stands and all that sort of stuff, all the equipment that it takes to do a film project or a video, whatever. And you just sort of learn it enough, and then you say, like, you get to the point where you can move up to being a gaffer, or whatever. So sometimes gaffers can move up to being a cinematographer. I wanted to be a camera assistant because I knew I'd always be right next to the DP. So I would always hear how he was lighting stuff, and he would be talking to the director, and I was right there all the time. So that was really important. So my job, what I wanted to do was learn as much as I could about the process.
Right.
And I got a chance to do it as the camera assistant and work with some awesome directors.
So do you try to take time with the people that work under you to bring them along? Or
yeah,
they just
absolutely.
Doing their gig?
Yeah, absolutely. We always try to move people up. Like my assistant in the office, want to move them up because everyone wants to learn and grow, and you don't want someone who just wants to be an assistant for the rest of their life necessarily. You want someone who wants to do what you do because they're always hungry for more, and you want to be able to give them more responsibility and more things to do and more things to learn. So it should, that's how I sort of came up, and I realized that you need to sort of foster that environment of trying to have people move to that next level in their careers and stuff like that. And it's a good it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not. I remember when I started off as a camera assistant, it was a really small community here in New Orleans. So I was like, I want to be a camera assistant, and talking to the first ACs or whatever. And at first they were sort of like, who's this guy? And all that sort of stuff. They really didn't want me around, but I stuck to it, and they were like, okay, you're in the club or whatever. So once you sort of show that you were really eager and wanted to learn and were serious about it, and it wasn't just like a whatever, passing sort of thing, they were really cool about really taking me under their wing and teaching me whatever I wanted to know.
That kind of community where you bring each other along.
Yeah.
So now moving up the ladder to the director position, now the DP works for you, and you've got all the other responsibilities associated with it. You got to take care of actors. Could you talk about the responsibilities?
Yeah, I remember the first film short that I did when I was, I think it was right before I started AFI as a director. I was like, okay, well, I haven't really directed much because I mainly was a camera assistant and a DP. And I remember the first short that we did, like the first shot, like it was a little boy, and a story about a little boy and his dog, and we were there on set, and the makeup person came and showed me the kid, and he was like, "Okay, he's ready. What do you think? It looks good." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. I don't know anything about makeup." And then I'm thinking, like, afterwards, like right before we set up the shot, I was like, "Man, that kid looks like he had a lot of lipstick on. Like, why should a little boy have lipstick? It just looks really weird. It's a bad makeup job. Like, someone's got to tell him that. Someone's got to tell them that's got to change." And I realized at that moment that would be me. So that was sort of the first learning experience. And honestly, like when I was, to step 1 second back, when I was a DP, like the first thing I'd ever shot was a feature. Actually, I had some friends that went here to Loyola, and I was at UNO at the time, and they had, you know, a CP16 film camera and everything. So I took a class so I can rent the camera. We made a film together, and that was the most awesome learning experience, because here we are, we're making a film. You know, we found someone paid a few bucks. You know, we had like $20,000 raised from one of the students' families or whatever. I guess they had a little money, and they wanted to help us out. And that was the. I learned more in the first 3 days of shooting a feature than I probably have still ever learned in my whole career.
Really?
Because
you had to figure it out.
Yeah, you had to figure it out, man. It's like, well, no one else is going to tell you how to do it. You gotta light it. You gotta figure it out. And you have to keep to the schedule, or you're really screwed.
Right.
So that was a really important thing. So I definitely encourage everyone to just go do it.
So the skill set for a director would include what?
So a skill set for a director, and I haven't done a whole lot of films, honestly, like, because as soon as pretty much right after I graduated from AFI, and I made a couple of shorts, I'd started being a producer right away. So I have a limited experience in that, but basically, it's it's knowing how to talk to actors. You know, that's a really important thing. Really getting what you want out of them, and that's a whole particular breed of people who have their own ways of sort of, they have their methods and the ways of doing things, and it's difficult sometimes to know how to get into them. I mean, basically, what I would just basically talk to them about is like what I really wanted out of the scene, and not trying to be too fancy or artsy about it. Just like, I want you to do this and whatever, but not trying to give them their lines and the way that, don't have them read their lines exactly. Don't read their lines to them. Like, don't like act it out for them. They don't I know they don't like that.
Yeah, right.
So they want to figure it out themselves, and that's the whole process. So it's that, and knowing, basically how you want to tell a story, first of all. So you'd start off with storyboards or a shot list or whatever, after you get a script and a story that you really like.
So you really could sketch out the whole thing, do it Alfred Hitchcock style, and every scene is sketched.
Exactly. Sometimes you do that if it's a complicated scene, or sometimes you just write a shot list. I know I need a wide shot, I know I need a close-up, I know I need a cutaway, whatever, an insert shot of, some
And you
object.
design that list, you create that list as a director.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you are working with the cinematographer to get to talk about the mood and the style of shooting. If you want it to be, the look of the film, whether, whatever that might be. If you want it to look really, soft and pretty, or really harsh and gritty, or whatever. There's so many ways you can obviously do it.
Wouldn't certain DPs be better for one way than the other? I mean, don't you have a style?
Sometimes. I mean, that's one thing that's kind of not good about the Hollywood way, I guess, because Hollywood is very easy to pigeonhole someone into, like, okay, you're the comedy guy, you made a comedy movie, that's all you're going to do is comedy movies.
And people hate that.
Well, I mean, like, I'm the type of person where, like, I did a really gritty kind of reality film for my thesis film that actually got me into the reality sort of world.
Oh, yeah.
But I also did like a cute little kids film. So I like to, people have more range than just one style. Some people want to just be comedy directors. I'd like to do a little bit of everything,
right.
So yes, I mean, generally you definitely want someone who you look at their, like, for a cinematographer, you look at their reel and you want to know that they can do what you want them to do. So it's generally you'll say, like, okay, this guy can shoot in this style, and that's a style that I like, or he has a cool sort of eye.
Who's somebody you admire right now that's a great DP, a great cinematographer, in movies, whatever?
Probably my favorite would be Roger Deakins. Is a great DP. I worked with him once on Dead Man Walking, and he was a pretty cool guy. And
what makes him great?
Well, it's just his exactness of how he shoots. He shoots a film. He knows exactly what he wants. I don't know, working with him was really cool because, he's the type of DP where he would light a scene with one light. Like I remember this one scene that we shot for Dead Man Walking. And we're just in a room with Susan Sarandon in a room, and there's a 5K, which is a light that's about this big. And he just bounced it off of a board and cut it with a bunch of flags. And that was it. That was the whole scene. And it was a really important scene in the movie, but he just sort of did it like this, and he didn't even look at his light meter. He knew exactly what the film stop was going to be, the exposure was going to be. He's like, I know it's a 2/8/4 split. He'll check it just for the ceremony of doing it. That's right, okay, and shoot the scene. He just knows his craft so well, and he's one of those types of DPs that just knows how to tell a story visually. It's a whole another layer to the film.
Right.
That is more than just the characters and the script or whatever. It's a visual story.
So it makes you a better director in a sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, go back to the skill set. So you've got to be able to deal with actors, talent and difficulties.
Yeah.
DP
and
producers.
Producers, yeah.
So that's going to be somebody in your case about the budget or about time, or what are they?
Producers are they have those type of producers who are like line producers who are definitely on schedule and on budget and all that sort of stuff. But a lot of times, I've worked with producers like this where they're creative producers as well, where they may come up with the idea or option a script or a story that they'll do. When I'm looking for producers to work with, I want someone I'm going to collaborate with, not just be the money guy, because it's the more brains on a problem, usually the better, I find. Yeah. And it's nice, I guess, ultimately when you're the director, and in my case, sometimes the executive producer, it's like ultimately my decision. Right. But it's nice to have that sort of support system of all these people who are really great at their crafts, and collectively you'll make it better with synergy.
So, are you thinking about music as a director?
Yeah.
What stage are you thinking about it? At the end? At the beginning? Where are you with that?
I mean, it really depends on what the scene would be or whatever. I've done movies where I play a little guitar and a little bit of music too. So I've done scenes in movies where I've written the music for that. I know what I wanted going into it. I know what kind of style it's going to be, and it's going to be part of the scene. But it's like anything else. It's just another. These are all. The way you look at it, it's all tools that you can use to make the film whatever you want it to be, So yeah, you definitely are thinking of, a style, of music going into it, because that'll help you set the pace. That'll help you set the tone for the actors. Even sometimes when I was doing movies, what I would do is I'd make a mixtape of music for the actors to listen to, or even the DP to listen to. Like, hey, this is music that inspires this, or even paintings, like I remember when I was making films, like, oh, this is a great Francis Bacon painting that is the style of, this is I want this to inspire you. And because this inspires me, this is what I think about when I think of this scene or this moment or whatever. Same with the music, and same with every other aspect of a film. And that's why I really love the craft, because it really puts, I like to play music and draw and all that sort of stuff. So filmmaking was what I had found to sort of put all the creative, talents and things that I love to do together in one medium where, you're creating something new.
It makes sense. So as a director, you're also going to be dealing with the sound people. You got to get the sound to the film, and what else? What other skills are you going to? What other things you have to do as a director?
Wow. You're dealing with the sound, you're dealing with the editing as well.
After the post-production?
In post-production, that's a huge part of it, obviously. And the same thing, when I made my thesis film, I had a certain way that I wanted it to be, but the editor was like, oh, I'll try a scene this way. And he'll create a moment that I never even had thought of that was like, this is awesome. Like, this is better than I could have ever. I never imagined it this way, but it makes it so much better. Thank you. Let's put it in. So it's all part of that collaborative process.
So it must be a thrill working with genuinely creative people at every step.
Yeah, and
it's this team.
Right, and when everyone knows their craft really well, and it's just like it's like writing to them or whatever. It's just like they can do it effortlessly. It's great to work with people like that who really know what they're doing, But it's also great to figure it out, because that's how I started too. Like, I had no idea how to shoot a movie. We're just going to do it, and that's part of the fun of it as well. So,
well, if you're directing, you've probably got somebody right near you where you can just do this. I mean, who is that person?
You have an assistant director, who is the person who really sort of makes the trains run on time on the set. They'll have whenever the act, they'll know what scenes are going on when. They're also responsible for creating like a call sheet, which is like who's coming to work this day and what time they need to be there and all that sort of stuff. They're really the sort of master of the schedule, and they work really closely with the line producer and the production manager to make sure that if someone's a half an hour late, or if the production runs a half an hour late, that's going to cost you X amount of money, because that's overtime and all those other things. So as a director, your right hand man is the AD, who is really making sure that that everything is happening at the right time. Like, you'll block a scene with actors, to get the sort of general sense of where it is. The cinematographer would be right there, and you're working together to block the scene. And then it's the DP set for a while. They're going to light whatever you just talked about. The actors go away. Sometimes the director would go away as well and just work on whatever else, preparing for the scene. And then, and hopefully that'll be running on schedule. But it's the AD's job to make sure that the cinematographer is on time and not running behind and all that sort of stuff.
Did it ever freak you out to know that you're spending $10,000 a minute or something? I mean,
try not to think of it that way. I mean, it's kind of cool to think that I've spent like $20 million in a year for the past like 6 years or whatever. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't really think of it that way, because if you think of it like, I have 24 episodes to do, and I'm going to be traveling around the country for the next 9 months, and I have all this that I need to take care of. If you think of it like that, it is going to freak you out.
Yeah.
But it's really more like, okay, but no, I'm going to shoot this episode in 4 days, and I know that I have this amount of, people working on this. Yeah, like bite-sized morsels is the way I try to think of it. It's like, okay, every day is like one little bit less that you have to do, and if you try not to think of it as the whole, but just like, okay, here's the process and we're starting through it. Right. Then it's fine, because it is awesome to spend that much money, but it's also good to know like what the value of something is. Like, how much should a helicopter cost if I want to shoot a helicopter scene? Like, okay, that's going to cost me X amount. I know if I'm getting screwed on that, and whether it's worth it. Like, what's the production value that I'm getting out of that for what I'm spending on it? So that's another huge part of the decision making sort of the creative process. And I try to be responsible. Some producers and directors I worked for could care less about what if they're over budget or whatever. But I try to be responsible about it and like, okay, we're going to be reasonable, and we'll find a creative solution around something we can't afford to do, and usually that'll be better than spending all the money for the big crane or helicopter or whatever shot that you want to do.
Is there somebody that's attending to the needs of the actors other than yourself?
I guess like production assistants or their own assistants generally, but I've never worked, honestly, I've worked on films like that, but I've never worked on a film big enough to say like, yes, I have actors, name actors with assistants and all that sort of stuff.
Well, how many minutes a day of footage can you get on a good day?
On a film set, you'd probably expect about 2 minutes of footage.
2 minutes a day?
Yeah, 2 minutes of usable film.
You got to be kidding.
No,
we could speed that up, man. I tell you.
Well, but it depends. If on a low budget, I've shot stuff where I'm shooting 6 pages in a day, which is basically the way that it breaks down on a film script. It's like a minute per page. Simple way to think of it. A script is about 120 pages long. Movies somewhere around that level as well. So, but I've definitely worked on stuff where you're shooting 5, 6, 7 pages a day if you need to. But it really depends. When I shot my thesis film, we had like 5 days. I think it was like 5 or 6 days to shoot the whole thing, and it was 30 minutes long.
Oh, you had to get
so we had to crank through that. Right. But the way that I sort of allotted for that was like the style that I wanted to shoot it in. We ended up shooting it with video and making it a very sort of cops-looking, film. So I know I can get a lot of stuff in the can, and also not worry so much about the production value. Actually, what we did was make enhance the production value that we had, make that work for us. You know, like we didn't have a lot of money to do it, but we got some cool locations. So we're like, okay, whenever something looks messed up, we want it to look like reality. So we'll you know, hang a lantern on the bad parts, and not to show like it's a bad film, but just sort of say like, hey, it's real. You know, it's not a perfect process. If the cameraman for this film that I made was doing too smooth of a move, I would literally go up to him and bump the camera because I wanted it to look bad.
That's interesting. So you know what shortcuts to take to suit the budget. If you've got limited money, you have to take shortcuts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what shortcuts to take. It's just sort of out of necessity. You know, like this is, okay, well, it's what I got, and this is how we got to do it.
So the same, you can get how many minutes from a TV show if you're on a day?
It depends. It depends on if it's. I haven't done a lot of scripted shows, so I wouldn't know. Probably, I would say they would shoot. I mean, I've worked on some films more as a camera assistant. They would shoot probably more than that, probably 4 or 5 pages a day. I would say, but that's kind of a educated guess. I really don't know.
Well, to shoot a 30-minute show for television in your world, it's going to take you how many days?
About a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Pretty solid work.
Well, again, it depends. If you're shooting a scripted show, like they'll shoot. My friend of mine works on Ugly Betty. They shoot. That's an hour show, about 42 minutes of edited footage, and they shoot that. And I think it's like 8 days. Every 8 days, they shoot an episode. When I did Top Model, which is a reality show, we shot every episode in about 4 days, sometimes 3, and that's to make again about 42 minutes of footage.
Interesting. So. Okay, so we've kind of covered director and the people you're dealing with there. So moving up a notch, now you got to be producer. So now the producer's really interacting mostly with the director and the actors, or how would you describe that process?
Again, it's different in reality TV and in film. Like an executive producer on a film is a much different person than an executive producer on a reality show. Yeah. Executive producer on a film is more the person who's like usually finding the money or buying the project or really kind of funding the whole thing.
See. The money guy.
In my experience and being in a reality show, there are some of those people as well who are like the production company may get an executive producer. But my job is called showrunner. I'm executive producer and showrunner. And they have that same title in scripted as well. Basically, my job is running the whole show. Like I'm responsible, the way that I see it, for everything that you see on you know, from keeping the show on budget, making sure the creative is right. And when I did Top Model, I was executive producer and showrunner. Although there were other EPs on the show, I really sort of took it as my responsibility to make sure that everything was right. And that's down to hiring. You know, I wouldn't hire the PAs, but I would make sure that like someone was managing that in the right way.
How do you get those gigs? How do you get the gig of being a producer for a show? You have experience, you have a track record, and people call you, or you sell ideas?
You know, many different ways as well. There's no set rules to how Hollywood works. I know some producers who just come up with an idea, know a guy, find an agent, sell a show, I'm an EP all of a sudden. Huh. Like anyone in this room could probably do that, although it might not be easy, but it can happen. And I've seen it happen. I got really lucky to be a producer because as I was a director for Real World, I was also making another short film with my wife and some friends of mine, and sort of producing that and directing, and I wrote it. And I didn't realize that the company that I worked for, which was Bunim and Murray, who produces The Real World, and they still do, they sort of heard that I was doing that, and I think they saw that and they were like, well, this he's producing his own stuff. Do you want to produce our show? And I was like, I didn't want to be a producer at that point. So they asked me to do it. I kind of told them no. And then talked to my wife, and then 10 minutes later I was like, yes, I would really like that job. It'd be stupid to not take that job. So, so I just got a lucky shot, you know, and luckily I didn't out too bad.
You made money for them.
Yeah, I made a little money for them, exactly, yeah.
So they called you back.
And they called me back, and then I did some other stuff. And then after I did my Real World, the CBS network executive, the guy who put Survivor on the air and put Amazing Race on the air and put Top Model on the air, he noticed, and I got called into his office, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to do Big Brother?" And I'm like, "No, I really don't like that show," which was probably really stupid of me to say, but at the same time, he probably liked that someone would come into his office and say, like, "I don't really like that show." So being naive sometimes is definitely helpful. So so he offered me to work on Big Brother. I said no, and I was like, what else you got? And then like a few weeks later, he called me. He's like, do you want to do Amazing Race? And I interviewed for the job, didn't get the job. Talked to my agent. I was like, why didn't I get the job? I'm really good for this job. I know I can do it. And then I got another interview for the job, and then I got the job. So I got, again, kind of lucky to get that job.
Well, when they call you in and they try to interview for the job, what are they asking for? What do they want? What are you trying to communicate?
You know, I couldn't tell you. I mean, what they were looking for in me, I think, was probably, because like when I interviewed for Top Model, for example, I'm sure Tyra interviewed me to make sure I wasn't an asshole or a creep or whatever, and was just can do the job. Like I had the track record, and she knew that I would be her champion.
Right.
And that's what she was looking for, I think. And also the other producers in the show wanted to know that I can do the nuts and bolts technical stuff of it. And I sort of talked about my background in cinematography and background in in filmmaking and all that sort of stuff. And the success of Amazing Race, which was obviously a huge plus. Yeah. And so I got that job.
Can you edit as well?
I can't edit at all. That's one thing I definitely have I mean, I could do it if I had to, probably not an avid, like with the really simple thing, but no, the answer is really no.
Yeah, you just want to hire a good editor.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell an editor what I think, works and why it works. I can sort of, because I have a narrative background, that's another thing that AFI really was great for me was they really focused on storytelling and narrative storytelling and sort of how to do that. And it really, there's no trick to it besides really just doing it over and over again and learning how to tell a story learning how to communicate a story in the best way that you can. So that was a big thing for me, was just learning how to tell a story and then using those skills as well, which translates sort of across the board into anything. It's really take all the stuff out that's not part of the story is really the trick. If it's not serving your story, you cut it out.
That's interesting.
And you try to be as efficient with all the story beats that you're trying to say. Like, don't go into long soliloquies about nothing. If it's not like the sort of two questions, I guess if there's a trick, this would be it. The two questions when I was a cinematographer that my teacher said always ask is, who is your main character and what do they want? And that sort of serves everything. Because if you can answer those questions, then you know who you're telling your story about. And then what do they want is everything that they don't want is unnecessary, and you cut it out.
That's great. Well, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I would love to getting more back into narrative filmmaking and directing, but I also have found success in producing, and I really enjoy that a lot. So I'd love to be producing more television and selling shows and making money to sort of help fund my film career that I'd love to get back into a little bit.
Do you write scripts?
Not well. So that's sort of a process. That's sort of the thing that like if anything, I have a regret. That would be sort of it. Of like, I've always wanted to get back into that, but I've been so busy doing reality shows. It's sort of which take up all my time and traveling. It's hard to do that, but yeah, I definitely would like to. I've written scripts, not great, and but have friends that help me make them better. And that's always a good thing, too.
I got a script for you.
Okay.
Well, if somebody in this room wanted to come and hang out on the set of one of your TV shows in town, can they do that?
Yeah, they can come. We have, right now, we're doing the Extreme Makeover show. They're shooting in West Wego, which is, on the West Bank, of course. And I think, I want to say, like what they have is like parking and then people get shuttled in for the Move That Bus scene, which is like at the end of every episode, they do a big reveal of the house to the family. I think that's on Thursday. We're going to do that. So I think it's like 2000 West Bank Expressway. I don't know. I can probably send it to you if people are interested and go into that. And it's it's just basically. Big crowds come and you can watch it happen there.
And to get involved in actually the process of making it happen, producing it, directing, all that, do you take young people to carry things or whatever?
Meaning what?
Interns, assistants?
I haven't really, unfortunately, a lot of the shows, that I've worked on, I think this is probably a little bit different, but a lot of the shows that I've worked on have been competition reality shows, and the networks don't let us have interns ever because it's a potential confidentiality problem. Basically, if you have an intern on the set and they leak a secret, you can't really fire them or sue them because they presumably don't have any money, and they're not really an employee; they're just an intern. So I haven't had a chance to do that, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are interns on. I'm really new to the Extreme Makeover show. I've just started a few weeks ago, so and I think they have some interns. Yeah, so it would be.
Is that where they do plastic surgery and fix your teeth and all that?
No, that's one version of the show. This is more like they rebuild a house in like 7 days, which is actually a pretty awesome thing to behold.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't work on a show.
Well, let's see. Anybody have any questions of our guest? Anybody interested in the film and TV world? A few takers. Greg? Test.
Check. All right.
Very good.
So, are you from New Orleans, or did you just go to?
Born and raised. Went to Brother Martin.
Could you talk about your experience of like getting out of college and like what was going through your mind at the time?
Okay.
And or like any of the opportunities or experiences that like came through your life?
Yeah.
That period?
After I went to UNO, the first thing we did, like I said earlier, was we made a film. Like I had some friends, we got together, and we're like, we're going to make a film. It's probably a lot easier for, I hate to say this, your generation, but kids like you to do that because you have access to things that we never had access to, like your own editing equipment, and you can buy a camera for $5,000 or less now. You can buy a great video camera for $5,000 that they'll show films at Sundance. When I was coming up, they wouldn't show videos at Sundance. Now they will. So so the first thing I did was shooting a feature, but that was a lucky sort of break. Friends putting something together, and that was an awesome learning experience. But really, how I made money and started was, I started off as a PA. Just a friend of mine was working on a show. They came to when I was at UNO. They came to UNO looking for PAs to work on a project, and I got hired for a day, and then I got asked back. So that was great. I have a job, and started off doing that, and then camera assisting. I camera assisted for a while, and just really went to New York and learned how some of the cameras worked, and bought all the camera assistant books that I could to try to figure out how all this equipment works, and started taking a few little jobs. I started working on some small music videos, just local, like a guy, a camera guy who I found. I don't even know how I heard about the job, probably through school or something like that. And just started working, work as much as I can, just get a job as a camera assistant. That was my main goal. Just okay, I just want to work. And I did that for 5 years here in New Orleans after I graduated from college.
Did you work other jobs as well to get money?
No, New Orleans is a great city in that at the time I had I was living in Gentilly. I paid $200 a month for rent, so I had to work 2 days a month to make my rent. So that was pretty awesome. And I just really focused on doing that and just working my own little art projects and stuff like that at the time. So I just tried to work really as much as I can and learn as much as I can from different people. And I worked on some I got in. It's always good to want to get asked back. So I started working for this one guy. I shot a rap video with him first, and then he ended up doing all these documentaries. So it was a really small crew. It was 5 of us. It was the cameraman, the director, me, who was the AC, and the sound guy, and a producer. And I worked on I don't know how I even got this job. Just worked for this guy a couple of times. He called me up. It's we're going to Colombia. We're going to shoot a documentary about Pablo Escobar. I'm like, yeah, awesome. I'm in, totally. So I just started working for this guy, and I worked for him for 3 or 4 years. And as I sort of learned the craft and day played on little movies here and there, a lot of movies that came into town, or music videos for a day or two, just pick up little work as much as I could. and again, learned as much as I could from as many people, and make, it's a pretty small community. It's probably a little bit bigger now than it was then, but that's a good thing for you guys, that you can work, and there's a lot of films going on in town, and just get in with people and be a nice guy, and do what they say and listen and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't that hard to continue working. Basically, don't be a dick is the kind of rule that I would, like, just shut up and learn. And I did that as much as I could. And
when did you move, like, from New Orleans out? I guess another place. Or it just like, was it the right opportunity at the right time?
Well, after about 5 years after about probably 4 years of being a camera assistant and doing a little DP jobs here and there, little cinematography jobs here and there on music videos, rap videos and stuff for my friends or whatever, and talking to all the guys in the business, I realized, like, okay, talking to this guy who shot all these movies of the week that came into town. He was a cinematographer, and I was like, what do you make a week? What do you make a day? And it was like, I forgot what it was, like maybe like $700 a day or $700 a week or whatever it was. I was like, that's pretty good, but I want to make more than that. So it's like, what do I got to do? It's like, well, you gotta go to Hollywood. So I didn't really plan on going to Hollywood. I never wanted to be a Hollywood producer. I moved to California. I liked being from New Orleans, and I loved living here. So I applied to film school. And that's, when I applied to AFI, I only applied to one school, and I knew it was really hard to get into. They only take like 25 cinematographers and 25 directors and like 9 editors every year for their program. So I was like, okay, I'll just, on an outside chance, I'll try out for this. And I went to the school and kind of liked it, and sort of moved into directing. And then I got a really lucky shot after, my thesis film made it into Sundance, which it was like an AFI film hadn't been in Sundance in like 9 years before that film was, and it was just like a really lucky shot, like, and it was, it just sort of happened, from working as hard as I could on the ideas that I had and whatever, and it's a little bit of luck and a lot of, just learning as much as I could about the craft, because I knew this is all I really wanted to do, so, and I knew the sort of area that I was in, like literally at home in my garage right now. I still have my AC kit ready to go in case I need to go AC again. I know I won't, but it's sort of like, that's the mentality of like, okay, I love this job, and I would love to go camera assist again, just to kind of, it's a fun job. I enjoyed the work, so I don't know if that really answers the question, but.
It does. Thank you.
Kelvin?
What's the difference between reality and scripted reality, and how do you feel about Labor of Love?
There's all different types of reality shows, I would say. I sort of came up in, well, when I was working on Real World, it was before reality had really started, and I learned the method of like, we're going to do it as real as we can, as much of a documentary process as we can. We're not going to insert ourselves into the world. Like by nature of doing any documentary, you're going to change the environment, because you're there with a camera, and that's not natural. So, but as we tried to keep as true as we could to documenting these 7 kids' lives who were here. And again, it was before it had really taken off, and people, are making careers out of being a reality star, or whatever. It was just 7 kids who wanted to try this little experiment out. So I was really lucky to have that experience, and I've taken that with me since the beginning. Now, there are reality shows, I've seen it, where people will say, like, okay, go call that girl and start something, whatever. Like, I don't
do it.
I don't like to work that way. Like, I've been lucky enough to not have to work on shows like that. So the closest I would say I've gotten to that is when we did Top Model, and they're still shooting it now, obviously. The sort of way that I looked at it was situation reality, where we know we would create a situation of like, okay, girls, you're going to walk on a runway and it's on water and you're going to maybe fall off of it or whatever. So it's a little manipulative, but at the same time, all the reactions are real. So we're setting up something with that, everyone who's ever seen the show sort of any contestant on the show knows what they're getting into. It's a modeling competition, but at the same time, we're going to shock you and we're going to make it wacky and weird and whatever, and hard on you. So we would produce it we kind of knew what a reaction would be. Like, okay, we're going to shoot a photo shoot with a spider. Girls don't like spiders. It's going to be great. It's real simple. Real simple. That's sort of, I can boil it down to that simple sort of aspect. But once you introduce the spider, everything is real, and hopefully that's still the case on the show. It was certainly when I was there, of like, these are real reactions or whatever. There are shows like Flavor of Love where it's sort of like you're casting for the most outrageous and wild people you could find, and you are putting them in situations that again are going to be titillating and exciting and controversial and to create as much conflict as you possibly can. And I can appreciate that, but I try not to work on shows like that. And a big reason that I took the job that I'll be working on next year is because it's not really, it's a different kind of show, really. The family reactions are really real, and they really do build the houses in a day, in a week. And that's kind of cool to really be changing someone's life for the better. So it's sort of, there's so many different types of reality shows. It's hard to say that every production company that I've ever worked for has a completely different philosophy of how to do it, and a completely different method, and a completely different structure of how even the cameramen work and the producers work and all that sort of stuff. Some shows the segment producer deals with the cast, and some they never deal with the cast, and they only deal with setting up a scene or whatever. So it's kind of it's more organized than it was 8 years ago, I guess, when I started. But it's still pretty much the Wild West. There's no, like, film sets, what it's going to be like. There's a structure, there's a hierarchy, it's a standard way of doing things. It's proven and it works, and it's worked that way for 100 years. Reality, it's sort of like, oh, let's throw this up on the wall and see if it sticks. So.
Wild, Wild West. Well, I think our time is up, but we want to thank Anthony Dominici for coming on. Thank you very much. That was great.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.